Ooh, you're comparing Jokic to the greatest center of all time, the most accomplished basketball player ever. Ooh. Well, this isn't meant to be an insult to the Joker or the captain. One would think that being compared to Kareem can only be a good thing. For the most part, it is. We'll get to the other side of this in a second. But I see many correlations between these legendary big men. He could be mentioned in the same breath as him. I think his ceiling is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. How often do players have the opportunity to be universally recognized as one of the top 10, top 5, top 3 players of all time? It's not in his nature, but it wouldn't be such a bad idea to start selfishly thinking about his legacy a little bit. We're halfway through the 2020s, and this decade is looking more and more like the 70s. For example, we haven't had a repeat champion. One of the bright spots of the league is that there's a lot of parity. We don't know who's going to win the championship from one season to the next. Another thing that this era has in common with the 70s, that there's one player who dominates from an individual standpoint. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was unquestionably the best player throughout that whole decade. There was nobody that was more statistically dominant than he was. That includes both per game statistics and advanced metrics. He knocks everyone out of the park. It's no surprise that he won 5 MVPs during those 10 years. That number could have been even higher, but there were times he was a victim of voter fatigue. The 1973 season is a perfect example of that. There was just no case for Dave Cowens to win the MVP over him. And we're seeing the same thing now with Nikola Jokic. No one is more dominant statistically. That includes both per game statistics and especially advanced metrics. He already has 3 MVPs. That number could also be higher if he wasn't a victim of voter fatigue. A lot of people point to the 2023 season when he lost it to Joel Embiid that he was more deserving. As of right now, he is a betting favorite to win the MVP this season. That will put him up to 4 MVPs. If he continues playing the way that he is, he will be put in elite company. The players that have over 4 MVPs are Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and of course, Kareem. This would be a huge deal. Whenever this happens, we all have to seriously consider making room in our top 10 players list for the Joker. Now we get to the other side of this. Although Kareem was easily the best player throughout that decade, his prime was somewhat wasted. The player who won 5 MVPs only won 1 title and reached the finals twice. As great as he was, he couldn't do it himself. Now we all know that wasn't always the case. By his second season, he had the luxury of playing with Oscar Robertson. They took advantage and won the title in their first season together. But let's not forget that he retired 3 years later. He aged fairly quickly. It wasn't selected to be an All-Star in 1973 and 1974. Kareem had to do more and more as each season progressed. The problem with the Bucks is that they didn't do anything to build on their title season. It's like they were hoping to recreate that magical season, and they never did. By 1975, the Bucks ended up missing the playoffs. I'm sure that has something to do with Kareem forcing his way out of Milwaukee, other than just wanting a change in scenery. I don't know. I feel like something similar is happening with the Denver Nuggets. You have a player who's averaging over 30 points, 13 rebounds, and nearly 10 assists per game. You have a player that has 3 of the past 4 MVPs, and it could very easily be 4 of the last 5. Even with having this incredible advantage, you're currently 5th place in the West. You currently only have 1 title and 1 finals appearance to show for it. Should we start looking at the organization and wonder why they haven't capitalized on having this unicorn of a player? I don't know if we should blame them or the way the coaches are running their offense. The biggest question mark for me is the way they're utilizing Jamal Murray. Is it any coincidence that the one time they won the title was when he was playing as one of the top guards in the league? In the 2023 playoffs, he averaged 26.1 points. The only other time they reached the conference finals, he averaged 26.5 points in the 2020 playoffs. The Nuggets are obviously at their best when he plays like that. They're unstoppable when Jokic has a teammate that could take over a game. Do the Nuggets opt to use a more balanced scoring attack because that's what the coaching staff wants? Or is it that Jamal is incapable of producing numbers like that consistently? Maybe it's a little bit of both. In the 2024 playoffs, he was averaging just as many field goal attempts as the 2023 playoffs, but he was much less efficient. For this season, he's averaging the lowest points per game and field goal percentage average since the 2018-19 season. Have all the major injuries he's had in his career caught up to him? Like Oscar Robertson when he was playing with Kareem, is he aging rapidly? I honestly think it's a crime that the Joker has never played with an all-star teammate. How can he go 10 years and not a single all-star teammate? On paper, we have never seen an all-time great have this little help. I'm sure the Nuggets thought that Jamal would eventually get to that point, but he has severely underachieved. Now we get to the part but he hasn't reached those expectations. Now here's where we get to the negative part of this comparison, especially if you're a Denver Nuggets fan. Kareem eventually left. He wanted out of his situation. The Bucks had no choice but to trade him for a crummy deal. If Nikola Jokic really cares about his potential and what he could accomplish with his career, will he eventually run out of patience with his organization? I don't blame him if he does. As he turns 30 years old in the next coming weeks, this next stage of his career will determine how we view his legacy. Because I was thinking about this. How would we view Kareem's career if the Lakers never won that infamous coin flip and never drafted Magic Johnson? What if Kareem never won another title? With all those records that he broke, will he still be considered a top 10 player with one title? I know I wouldn't have him that high. I would put him in the next tier greats such as Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, and Moses Malone. They had great careers, but never won more than one title. Of course, that's just a hypothetical scenario that we'll never know the answer to. But if the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic are unable and unwilling to make any major changes, then I guess we'll find out with him. He'll break all these records, win all these MVP awards, but will hold his lack of playoff success against him. I don't want to see that with him. I think he could be considered a top 5 player ever. But to be in that kind of company, you need to win multiple titles. 1 or 2 titles ain't gonna cut it. It's in his hands, and we'll see if he ages as gracefully as Kareem did, and if he finally gets the talent needed to reach that pantheon level.